My favorite recipes to make are the traditional Lebanese recipes I learned from my grandmother and I grew up eating. This vegan lima bean stew is one of my very favorite. It's loaded with vegan iron and protein, making it a super comforting and warming stew to get you through those winter months. Welcome to Kat's Vegan Kitchen. Let's get started. The star of this recipe is lima beans. I like to buy mine dry, but you can also use canned, which makes the recipe a lot faster. Lima beans are so delicate and buttery that some people will call them butter beans, and you may see them called butter beans if you buy them canned. They are a little bit hard to find. I will put a link in the description where you can buy them. It's really worth it to use lima beans in this recipe because they add such a delicious, delicate, and buttery flavor, and they're also a great source of vegan iron. You're going to start by adding 1 cup of dried lima beans to a bowl and add enough water so they're well covered. I soak mine for at least 8 hours. Once they've doubled in size, strain them and rinse them again. Start by adding 1 tablespoon of olive oil and 2 tablespoons of plant-based butter to a soup pot or Dutch oven. We use plant-based butter in this recipe because it's going to be served over rice and it gives it a really nice and buttery flavor. Grandma always said, don't be stingy with the butter, honey. Once it's melted, add in about 1 cup of diced yellow onions. Once your onion is nice and sauteed, translucent, and a little bit brown, we're going to add in our soaked lima beans. I soaked about 1 cup of dried lima beans. Once soaked, that's going to be about 4 cups of lima beans. Add just enough water to cover your lima beans by about 1 inch or 2 inches. In this case, that's going to be about 4 cups of water. Add in a teaspoon of salt, about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and a couple pinches of allspice. For this recipe, you want allspice. Don't confuse that with Lebanese 7-spice. We're gonna mostly cover that, and because it's a stew, we're gonna let it simmer for about an hour before we add our next ingredients. One of the reasons people eat a plant-based diet is to improve their health. And this recipe really is a nutrient powerhouse. It's loaded with vitamin C, it has vegan iron, but I'm gonna show you how to add more protein and more calcium to the dish. Sometimes I'll add in some impossible meat. This recipe is called fasulia in Lebanese. I probably massacred that because I don't know Arabic, but traditional fasulia is sometimes made with lamb meat. My grandma never made it that way. She always made it vegetarian, but often I will add in some ground impossible meat right when I'm sauteing the onion. That's gonna add in a whole bunch more protein to your recipe and make it a little bit heartier. The other thing I will sometimes do, and I wouldn't do this till the end, is I'll add in some chopped greens like spinach or kale or even Swiss chard at the very end because that's gonna add in additional iron and calcium. Those are not part of the traditional recipe, but I do often modify these recipes to make them more healthy. Be sure to watch your stew as it's simmering. If too much water boils off, just add a little bit more to make sure the beans are covered, or fully cover your pot so that it doesn't boil off as fast. After our beans have been simmering for about 1.5 hours, I'm going to add in some tomato paste. This part's a little bit tricky. I add in anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 cup until I get it the color I want it to be. I want it to be a bright red. Once I've added the tomato paste, I'm gonna let it simmer uncovered over medium-low heat until the beans are at the consistency I want it to be. I want there to be liquid, but I don't want it to be too soupy. Making this recipe the traditional way does take a little bit of time, but remember if you use canned beans, it really cuts the whole recipe time in half. I will link the written recipe in the description below so you have both the canned and the dried beans recipe. We're almost done and ready to serve. The consistency I'm looking for is I want there to be enough sauce to pour it over the rice I'm going to serve it over, but I want to be able to see the lima beans peeking out of the top. I want it to be relatively thick. The traditional way to serve your fasula is over rice. I'm using white rice because that's the way Grandma did it, but I often replace that with brown rice just to increase the nutritional value. Go ahead and toss a couple sprigs of parsley on top. for extra flavor and to make it look beautiful. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Remember, you can always find the full written recipe in the description below, along with tips and tricks to boost the nutritional value. This took a little bit of time, so I cooked up a double batch and I'm gonna freeze it so I have it all throughout the week. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time on Kat's Vegan Kitchen.